Recently, I was reading a story about a couple young Moravian missionaries. They had heard a story about Africa. And in Africa, there was this doctor who had gone to many different cities to see what it was like and what the situation is. And the doctor wrote back home about a city that he went to that had one entire section of the city walled off. And he wondered what was in this part of the city. He didn't see windows, he didn't see doors. It was really odd. And so he asked around to see what was going on. Nobody really gave him any answers. And next to the city, there was a large hill that went up above one of the walls. And so he climbed up that hill and looked down, and what he saw broke his heart. This area of the city that had been walled off were full of lepers, and no one was there taking care of them. What he saw was one man, they were planting their own garden to eat food, and one guy had no arms. His arms had literally been taken away by leprosy. And then one guy had no feet, and he was on top of the guy with no arms. Okay, so he was literally holding him above his head. And they were planting seeds, and so the guy with no arms would pull his foot and uncover the dirt, and then the guy with hands would drop the seed in, and the guy with legs would put it back over. And he said, this doctor wrote back home and said, this breaks my heart to see that no one's here taking care of these people. No one's here to share with them the love of Jesus. And these two young Moravian missionaries read the letter from this doctor and decided that they were going to go and see what they could do. And so after raising support, they got on a boat and went to Africa. They finally got to the city that this doctor had written about, and they looked all around the city for a door to go into this place, and finally they found one. There was one door into the leper colony of this city, but it was locked. And so these two young Moravian missionaries, they asked around to local officials, and they started asking, how can we get in here? What can we do? And the local city official said this. They said, you can go in, that's no problem. We can unlock it, and you can go inside. But there's one condition. That door only opens from the outside. And once you go in, you can't come back out. These two young men, unmarried, they prayed, and they felt God calling them to share the love of Jesus with these lepers. And so without thinking about it again, these two young men told the city officials, yes, we're willing to go in. He unlocked the door, and they walked inside and never came back out. We don't know what happened in that place. There's no story after that. But my imagination runs wild. These lepers were left to die. No one loved them. No one took care of them. And then these two young men who were healthy, that had no leprosy, came into these doors one day and were able to love and serve these people and tell them about Jesus. I can't wait to get to heaven and to meet these two young men and to meet the lepers that they brought to Jesus, because I know that it happened. Here's the challenge for you and I today. If these two young men can literally give up everything to go into a one-way door where they know they're not coming back out, then what are you and I willing to do for the gospel of Jesus Christ? What does his love mean to you and I? For these two missionaries, they were willing to risk everything, to give up everything, to give up the rest of their lives in order to serve a group of people that had no access to the gospel. And so what are you and I willing to do? That's the biggest question we can ask ourselves. The Moravian motto that they would say is when they would leave for the mission field, they would tell their friends and their family, as they waved and said goodbye, they would shout to one another, "May the Lamb that was slain receive the full reward of his suffering." What's that mean? It means that Jesus gave everything for us. He poured out every drop of blood for you and I so that we could have forgiveness. And the reward of his suffering is that people would come to know his love and grace, and people would come to know him and follow him. And so in the words of those Moravians, and in the same boldness and courage that those two young men showed at that leper colony, may you and I, may we give the Lamb the full reward of his suffering. And so today, may we decide that we will go through any door, we will go to any place, we will go to any country, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure that Jesus gets the reward of his suffering.